there anything else you want to go into today, or is it just the mic?
I think it's just nice. And that sounds fine.
Yeah,
so.
brilliant.
Yeah. And yeah, some other slides just passing.
Yeah, that's going to be on that.
Alright. So, yeah, hello everybody. And, yeah, it's great to be here today at this event. And thanks for having me and inviting me. I'm originally from Spain. I'm based in London. And I started doing this show in 2011 because it was the 75th anniversary of the events of the Spanish Social Revolution in Spain. Yeah, obviously. And one of the reasons I do this is because this is one of those, like most radical history, just goes under the carpet. And with the birth of the 15 movement, I thought it was really relevant that young activists knew about the past as well. There's so many people in Spain who doesn't know about these events. I think there's much more well known in other countries than there. And it's going to be a little bit of a gig with songs from those times, songs that were written there, or popular songs that got their lyrics changed. And I will tell you a bit about the history in between songs. And there is a history that I'm sure is very well known for most of you, but I will tell it anyway. There might be younger people who are not so familiar with it. And yes, someone was the person who was doing the cocaine utopian songs earlier on was talking about the importance of having a vision, having in our minds that world that we want to build and that we want to create. And also it's very, very important that we keep an eye on those times in history when that world was a reality and came to happen. Here we are in between that chain of continuity, fighting for social justice. And yeah, I think I'm going to start with a little piece. It's kind of like a song poem that explains a little bit, gives a little bit of context, and also explains some of my reasons to be doing this here today. The piece is called Scattered in the Wind, Esparcidas en el Aire. Scattered in the wind come the voices, songs of all times that were new times of hope. There was hunger in Spain in the 1930s. Peasants, miners, factory workers lived in harsh conditions of poverty and neglect. For the past decades, they have been coming together, taking to the streets, striking in the mines, occupying land. They had faced brutal repression and grown stronger. The military coup of 1936 was unsuccessful in many parts of the country and left a vacuum of power in those areas. By popular demand, the unions stepped in, and for the first time in the country's recorded history, people had the opportunity to engage in creating a new society of cooperation, fairness, safety, bread and education, land and freedom. In a matter of months, large portions of land had been collectivized and belonged to the workers. Factories, transport, Services were also collectivized and in the hands of the people who work them. Production increased, even though a civil war was also being fought, mostly by poorly armed and trained volunteers against the armies of Franco, Hitler, and Mussolini. Negras tormentas agitan los aires, nubes oscuras nos impiden ver. These are the songs, the voices of those people who fought to defend their newly born freedom. I don't intend to glamorize weapons. I sing these songs to honor their spirits and in gratitude for what they gave and the paths they open for future generations. I sing to remember the stories of resistance of my ancestors, because knowing the past, we can better understand our present and be able to shape our future. And erasing the past erases a part of our own power. What took place in Spain in 1936 is very much alive today all over the world. We are part of the same chain striving for liberation. El bien más preciado es la libertad, hay que defenderla con fe y valor. We are building the future right now, by being the change that we want to see, by taking risks, to standing up, by bringing peace to our hearts and minds, by doing all those things we are already doing to make the world a better place. Spain in the 1930s was mostly an agrarian society. Past the slides, you can just. And it was a society of millions of peasants, and there was a few millions of landless peasants, a few very powerful landowners. One of the most powerful landowners was the Catholic Church, which also had monopolized the education, kind of ensuring that the status quo wasn't challenged, and things kept being the way they were, with the oppression of millions of people. There was also a very strong mining industry, mostly in the north of Spain, the area of Asturias and León, and also some in the south, the past. And there was these people living in incredibly harsh conditions, totally abandoned. They didn't have any access to healthcare. The access to education was really limited, really poor, and they live in poverty. It's a time of very strong and powerful resistance as well. A time of the birth of the unions, particularly since the end of the 19th century, with the introduction in the country of the ideas of socialism and anarchism. People had started to think and believe that they could change their situation. For many people until there, this was the will of God, under the influence of the church. They thought that things were as they were, and they pretty much couldn't do anything to change them and accept their fate. It wasn't everybody, but it was certainly a reality for many workers and dispossessed. And with the introduction of these ideas, people start changing their consciousness and believing that they could get together and start organizing and start fighting for change and transformation. So this is the time of the birth of the unions. It's the time of this is a mine in the southern Spain. And the CNT is born in 1918. And also is the time where the PUM, the Workers' Party for Marxist Unification, is born, and some other unions. And people were engaging in industrial action big time, and also in striking in the mines. There was a very important miners' strike in 1934, which was repressed really brutally by Franco. He was called from Morocco, Spanish colony at the time, and he came over to crush the strike. And it was also in 1933, was the time of the massacre of Casas Viejas, which was like an anarchist uprising in the south of Spain, time of a big agricultural land. There wasn't much industry in that areas, and the rebels were totally massacred. And there was also many general strikes at that time, also crushed very brutally by the authorities. So this was the climate of the early mid-30s in Spain. And I would like to sing a song that's about a miner's accident. And it's a song that was sung in 1934 at the time of the miners' strike, and it's become kind of like a symbol of miners' resistance. And it's about a mine in Asturias that's called Maria Luisa. And it's a miner coming back home with his head broken and with blood of his comrade in his body, and just saying, "Look at me, how I'm coming, and this is our situation." And this is a song to invite people to fight. It's called Nel Pozo Maria Luisa. Nel pozo Maria Luisa, la 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 la. Nel pozo Maria Luisa, la 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 la. Murieron 4 mineros, mirai, mirai Marusiña, mirai, mirai cómo vengo yo. Traigo la camisa roja, la 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 la. Traigo la camisa roja, la 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 la. Con sangre de un compañero, mirai, mirai Marusiña, mirai, mirai cómo vengo yo. Traigo la cabeza rota, la 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 la. Traigo la cabeza rota, la 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 la. Que me la partió un barreno, mirai, mirai María Luisa, mirai, mirai cómo vengo yo. Mañana son los entierros, la 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 la. Mañana son los entierros, la 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 la. De estos pobres compañeros, mirai, mirai Marusina, mirai, mirai cómo vengo yo. De estos pobres compañeros, mirai, mirai Marusina, mirai, mirai cómo vengo yo. There's another very beautiful popular song that was called "In the Square of My Village," and it says, some of the lyrics say, "In the square of my village, the landlord said to the master, 'Our children will be born with a raised fist. This land that is not ours, this land that belongs to the master, I water it with my sweat, and I work it with my hands. And tell me, compañero, compañera, if this land is not ours, if it belongs to the master, why haven't we ever seen him working with us in the plough? With my plough, I make the furrows. With my plough, I write a layer over the land of misery and sweat.'" Some of you know any of the songs, just please do it. En la plaza de mi pueblo, dijo el jornalero al amo, en la plaza de mi pueblo, dijo el jornalero al amo. Nuestros hijos nacerán con el puño levantado. Nuestros hijos nacerán con el puño levantado. Esta tierra que no es mía, esta tierra que es del amo, esta tierra que no es mía, esta tierra que es del amo, la riego con mi sudor, la trabajo con mis manos, la riego con mi sudor, la trabajo con mis manos. Pero dime, ay compañero, si estas tierras son del amo. Pero dime, ay compañera, si estas tierras son del amo. Porque nunca le hemos visto trabajando en el arao. Porque nunca le hemos visto trabajando en el arao. Con mi arao hago los surcos, con mi arao escribo yo. Con mi arao hago los surcos, con mi arao escribo yo. Patina sobre la tierra de miseria y de sudor. Patina sobre la tierra de miseria y de sudor. En la plaza de mi pueblo, dijo el jornalero al amo. En la plaza de mi pueblo, dijo el jornalero al amo. Nuestros hijos nacerán con el puño levantado. Nuestros hijos nacerán con el puño levantado. Well, yeah, this is the PUM, the Workers' Party of Marxist Unification, the party that was joined by George Orwell when he came to Spain to support the revolution. And, yeah, this is the fight of Anarchist Federation in Spain. Okay, well, let's go back then.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I told you to. Forgot that one was there. Anyway, well, this is the 1930s, the time between world wars in Europe, rise of fascism. And the ideas of fascism had entered Spain as well and had taken hold in some of the most conservative sectors of society. And it's particularly in the military. It wasn't huge, but the Falange organization, fascist organization, is born at that time and joined by some of the generals in the Spanish army. And the Falange found the position between workers and people in general. They came to fight them and they demonstrated or whatever. And it wasn't massive, but they had weapons. Has infiltrated the army. And this is also Spain at this time. It's a republic. It's quite a progressive government. They given the vote to women, and they're trying to do a land reform and stuff. So they're trying to introduce some changes that the conservative sector of society is not happy with at all. So it's kind of the Anarchist Federation and the CNT had a very kind of powerful net of espionage in the army, and they knew that the coup was imminent, and they started to prepare for it by storming barracks and getting hold of weapons, manufacturing weapons. They also took a boat that was coming with weapons from abroad and just armed themselves how they could. So when in 1936 there's this the military coup, the generals rise against the republic. They come out to the streets to fight the fascists, and they fight them how they can. And the people who come out to the streets are workers, unionists, but also people from different political parties from the center to the left. Also some members of the civil guard and the Republican, the Guardia de Asalto, which was the Republican police. People come out to the streets against the fascists. And in many parts of Spain, they managed to push them back, and Spain gets divided. The white bit is the part that has defeated the fascists, and the other one is this. I think this is an early map after, early July 1936, just after the coup. And in these areas, a civil war starts between the two factions. I'm probably saying things that most of you know, but just for the benefit of those who don't. And people, the army is in the side of the fascists mostly. Some people have been moved to the other areas, some soldiers and stuff, but most of the people are fighting with the fascists. Most of the army is fighting with the fascists. And the militias get formed in the Republican side by mostly volunteers, very young people, don't have training, don't have an idea of how engage in an armed struggle, the cost of engaging in an armed struggle. And women and men, they go to the front. And it's not a proper army. It's got they have a commander and a little bit. They follow orders from people who have a little bit more of an idea about strategy and stuff. But they're pretty much non-hierarchical, and everybody it's the same, and everybody lives and fight together. And at the same time that this is going on, many people obviously I just want to mention the international brigades. They went to Spain from many different countries to support this revolution and support the militias, and many people from this land. And I just want to remember the amazing contribution of the international brigades at that time. So this is happening in the front lines, and on the other side, in places like in Catalonia and Madrid, after the fascists have been pushed back, there is a popular uprising. People said, well, we don't as much as pushing the fascists back, we're not going to the old ways. Workers are demanding revolution, they're demanding a radical change in the structures and in the way society is run. The government is pretty overwhelmed after the coup, and many landowners, people who own factories and stuff, have also either left the country or moved to the fascist side. Some of them have been killed. Many members of the church have been killed as well. So there's a little bit of a crisis of power, and the unions are given a platform to run it. The CNT was very strong at the time, had 1.5 million members, and they are given the administration of society, and this is the beginning of the Spanish social revolution, which is very vibrant, short-lived, and we'll be talking a little bit more about it in a minute. But I wanted to bring a song that is it was sung by people who went to the barricades, and I'm sure many of you know it. It was translated to many languages. It's called "A las barricadas," to the barricades. Originally, the tune comes from a Polish revolutionary tune that was given lyrics at that time. So if you know it in any, I know it was translated to English and German and stuff, so if you know it, just join me.
Negras tormentas agitan los aires, nubes oscuras nos impiden ver, aunque nos espere el dolor y la muerte. Contra el enemigo nos llama el deber. Bien más preciado es la libertad. Hay que defenderla con fe y valor. Alza la bandera revolucionaria que hacia el triunfo sin cesar nos lleva en pos. Alza la bandera revolucionaria que hacia el triunfo sin cesar nos lleva en pos. En pie, milicianas, a la batalla, hay que derrotar a la reacción. A las barricadas, para el triunfo de la Confederación. A las barricadas, para el triunfo de la Confederación. Nuevas tormentas agitan los aires, nubes oscuras nos impiden ver, aunque nos espere el dolor y la muerte, contra el enemigo nos llama el deber. Bien más preciado es la libertad, hay que defenderla con fe y valor. Alza la bandera revolucionaria que hacia el triunfo sin cesar nos lleva en pos. Alza la bandera revolucionaria que hacia el triunfo sin cesar nos lleva en pos. En pie, milicianas, a la batalla, hay que derrotar a la reacción. A las barricadas, para el triunfo de la Confederación. A las barricadas, para el triunfo de la Confederación.
Thank you. Some posters just calling people to join the militias, women as well as men. Milicianos. And this is Mujeres Libres. This is a poster of the organization Mujeres Libres that was born in 1936 as well. And Mujeres Libres means free women. At the other side of the front lines, we have a vibrant social revolution taking place. The process of collectivization has started. And land is being collectivized, factories are being collectivized, restaurants are being collectivized, transport, you name it, everything in many parts of the country. And Mujeres Libres wanted to make sure that the world that we were building didn't forget women, and that the world that was being built was going to be a world that didn't have violence against women. A world in which women didn't go from being the property of the husband to being the property of the father to be the property of the husband. A world where they have equal rights, rights to education, rights to dignity and freedom. They didn't necessarily call themselves feminists, though they were, but they didn't want to associate themselves with women from the upper classes who were fighting for their own problems, who didn't necessarily reflect the problems and the situation of working class women. And they necessarily didn't call themselves anarchists, though they had a libertarian agenda, or they subscribed to many libertarian ideas, because they recognized that there were lots of patriarchal ideas that many of the anarchists were subscribing. So they wanted to detach themselves a little bit from that. But they were part of the revolution, they were everywhere, they were in the front, they were in the organizing land redistribution meetings, organizing in the factories, they were union leaders, and they were pretty amazing. And we will back to them later and sing one of their songs. So let's go on. These are some of the milicianos. From collectivization of trams and transport. This is a picture of a land redistribution meeting, and they are looking up to the sky for planes. And I think that one important thing to remember is the unions were facilitating this process, but people and were the workers that were making the decisions. They were getting together, deciding how they were going to run the factory, how many hours they were going to work, how much they were going to get paid. They introduced equal pay. They would pay more to people who had more dependents, but not according to if you were a manual worker or you were an engineer, you were getting the same money per hour, basically. And so people were, from being told what to do and not being able to manage to support your family after working 50 hours a week or whatever, people went to really participate in society, in building it, and they were very conscious that they were supporting as well the front lines and people who were fighting in the front lines. And so it was very vibrant. It was people's spirits were really uplifted from this participation and having their voices heard. This is a picture of Emma Goldman visiting some collectivized lands in 1936, I think, at the end of 1936. And she went to write extensively, as I'm sure many of you know, about the Spanish Revolution. She died a couple of years later, and she said she was very happy that she had witnessed this unprecedented workers' revolution before she died. Let's keep going. And there was Paul Robson came to perform for the milicianos and milicianas. As you know, George Orwell wrote a beautiful book, Homage to Catalonia. And people were singing popular songs and changing their lyrics and writing new ones to pass on information about what was happening in the war, and also to keep their spirits and their morale high. And I'd like to sing you a song that's called Si me quieres escribir, if you want to write to me. It was sung by lots of milicianos. It says, if you want to write to me, you know where you can find me. I am fighting in the front of whatever you say, whatever front or where, first line of fire. And then it goes on to describe like some developments of the war and what's happening in this bridge and this other. So the lyrics would change according to the song you were in and which front you were at and all that stuff.
Si me quieres escribir, ya sabes mi paradero. Si me quieres escribir, ya sabes mi paradero. Lucho en el frente de Huesca, primera línea de fuego. Lucho en el frente de Huesca, primera línea de fuego. En el Ebro se han hundido las banderas italianas. En el Ebro se han hundido las banderas italianas. En el frente solo quedan las que son republicanas. En el frente solo quedan las que son republicanas. Aunque me tiren el puente y también la pasarela. Aunque me tiren el puente y también la pasarela, me verás cruzar el Ebro en un barquito de vela. Me verás cruzar el Ebro en un barquito de vela. Si me quieres escribir, ya sabes mi paradero. Si me quieres escribir, ya sabes mi paradero. Lucho en el frente de Huesca, primera línea de fuego. Lucho en el frente de Huesca, primera línea de fuego. No pasarán, no pasarán. 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 No pasarán, no pasarán.
Libres as well. And well, the international community had decided not to take part in the conflicts. They were afraid of Spain going red and Europe going red, and they decided not to do anything to support the revolution and the fight against the fascists. But soon Spain became a proxy war with the intervention of Hitler and Mussolini, and which really make the balance of things go really heavily in favor of the fascists, as you can imagine. And around April 1937, Stalin offers help as well. He just doesn't want to support the revolution with arms and military equipment, but he wants political control as well. He's not in favor of collectivization or in favor of workers' power. So he wants to stop the process of the revolution. And the government of the Republic subscribes to this because they thought it was the only chance of winning the war against Franco. And there probably were other reasons as well, that not trusting the revolution, not wanting Spain to go in that direction. And they want to also to create a republican army, a traditional army with hierarchies and all that. And this is seen with obviously the people from the CNT, the Libertarian Union, and from the PUM are really opposed to these new developments. They don't trust what the Stalinists are bringing. They think is going to be the end of the revolution, and they fight really hard so this doesn't happen. But the government decides to dismantle the militias and ask for the militias to give their weapons back. The anarchists and the people from the PUM don't want to do it. They say, no, we're not going to do this. At the same time, the collectivization has stopped and reversed in some cases. Land that has been collectivized passes again to the hands of the government in this case. The same with factories and transport and stuff. So there's a divide in the left, and at this point, some kind of like the government sees that the anarchists and the PUM are on its way, and there starts a campaign of character assassination, where many anarchists are accused of being, well, first of all, bringing chaos in the militias, not knowing what they're doing, not helping the fight against fascism, but doing the opposite and hindering the development of the Civil War. And what follows here is an outright accusation of treason. They start to say that the anarchists are actually on the side of Franco, that they're traitors, that they're spies, and many of them are arrested and taken to prison. The PUM is declared illegal, an illegal party, and the leader is killed. They are attacked into a communication center. The telephone exchange in Barcelona, which was in the hands of the anarchists, is attacked by the Republican police. So there's an armed confrontation for a little while. And basically, many of the anarchists get put into prison, and they get either condemned to death or killed while they're being tortured. Some of them were killed when they refused to give up their weapons in the front. Some of them were shot in the back while they were fighting the fascists. So this was the end of the Spanish Revolution, and some people held on to collectivization, but just at some point they just couldn't, because the government took over the land. And so it was a pretty awful chapter of betrayal. And the war went on for another couple of years, and it was lost in 1939 to the fascists, as you know. And I'd like to sing a song that I wrote a couple of years ago about these developments, and this one is in English. It is called Song of a Catalonian Girl. On July 18th, 1936, I was deep in the woods fetching water. That day the generals staged a coup. Many came out to fight them the way they could. And I was deep in the woods fetching water, when Barcelona sent the fascists away, and many a rich man and factory owner left. There was a chance for ordinary people to take control over their own precious lives. Libertarian groups were given power, and those were the days of the new way. The land is for the ones who live in it. The land is for the ones who work it proud and free. The land is for the hand that plants the seed. Bless the land under our feet.
Workshops for the ones who operate machines, factories for the ones who hold the tools, goods for everyone, the pay is equal, working place is safe and there is pride, pride on the work well done, pride for the rules are fair. And I was deep in the woods, fetching water, when the ones from the militia came my way. There were women as well, mujeres libres. There was one with brown eyes, who held my gaze. We sat by the river in the sunlight, told the stories and shared our love and pain. This land is for the ones who live in here, and women are reclaiming what is theirs. Dignity and freedom, dignity and freedom. So I went with her to fight against the fascists. That was before betrayal came our way, from the hands of those brothers who felt threatened by the power of our simple ways. Our group was made illegal, our guns were taken, our freedom fighters were thrown into jail. She was taken as well. I went on hiding, but I'm sure that we'll meet by the river again. Land is for the ones who live in it. Land is for the ones who work it proud and free. Land is for the hand that plants the seed. Bless the land under our feet. 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 Bless the land under our feet.
So, as I was saying, the civil war went on for another couple of years. These are some pictures of the war. This is near Madrid. This is before the discussion. Yeah. And yeah, go on. Some shelters. Go on. Resistance of Madrid. Yeah. And many people went into exile. And earlier on today, there was a beautiful talk about resistance in the 60s and the 70s in England. And there was some mention about the work of the CNT in London. People have exiles who were working in London, and yeah, most of the people who went to exile in this country concentrated down there in London, and they went as well to many places in South America. And resistance to the regime, which lasted 35 years, never stopped inside the country and outside the country. inside the country in the form of guerrillas and underground groups in the towns and guerrillas in the mountains. And in here, people were they were doing lots of trying to. Franco was presenting itself as like a benign dictatorship. When Hitler was losing the war, he decided to stop using the swastika and the salute that you have seen, like parades with nuns just doing the Nazi salute and stuff. And also he had made a film called Raza, and he edited it as well so that Hitler was losing the war, kind of like wanted to wash his face and present himself to the world as a benign dictator. And the resistance outside wanted to really show the reality of what's happening in Spain, which were like murders of hundreds and thousands, millions of people, and extreme repression and torture. And yeah, people in the CNT in London were engaged into boycotting the airlines, boycotting holidays in Spain, boycotting food, as it was said yesterday. Also sending people to look at trials, yeah, where there were anarchists that they were caught and they were taken to trial and stuff, and making sure that they had a fair trial or as much as they could. Also, when there was visitors from politicians to England or to any country where there were exiles, Spanish exiles that were members of the CNT or involved in politics, they made like big noise about it and about trying to bring awareness of the regime. And I think this resistance was fundamental in the fact that when Franco died, the regime didn't continue. He did reinstall the monarchy, but we went into a period of transition. After this, during this period, there was a referendum for democracy, and then a constitution was drafted and passed as well. And then we entered a period of, as you know, capitalist democracy, very similar to what happens in this country. And this, with all the social problems, all the injustices, and inequality and horrors of capitalism. So I would like to sing a song, a lament, that was written in the years of the Spanish Social Revolution. It's called If the Bullet Hits Me, and I want to dedicate it to everyone who fought, but also everybody who died, not also in the war and in the regime, but also as an effect of, as a result of capitalism, because there are many ways of killing, and one is with weapons, and another one is with killing people in poverty and neglect. If the bullet hits him.
Si la bala me da, si mi vida se va, bajadme callados a la tierra. Las palabras dejar, es inútil hablar, ningún héroe es el caído. Tiempos futuros será forjador, ansiaba la paz, no la guerra. Si la si mi vida se va, bajadme sin más a la tierra.
If the bullet hits me, if my life goes away, simply lay me down on the earth. Say nothing, words are not necessary. I am no hero. I was forging times for the future. and I was yearning for peace, not for war. So if the bullet hits me, simply lay me down on the earth. Si la bala me da, si mi vida se va, bajadme callados a la tierra. Las palabras dejar, es inútil hablar, ningún héroe es el caído. Tiempos futuros será forjador, ansiaba la paz, no la guerra. Si la bala me da, si mi vida se va, bajadme sin más a la tierra. Bajadme sin más a la tierra. Bajadme sin más a la tierra. In some ways, made the story of Guernica known to the world. Guernica was a little town of market town that got bombarded by the German planes, by the Luftwaffe, and 80% of the buildings went flat, and hundreds of people died. People who were in the market, hundreds of animals, and it was a horrendous tragedy. And yeah, I just wanted to say that it's important not to underestimate the importance of art and creativity and resistance, not only because we make these stories known to the world in a very specific way, but also because creativity and art carry a vital force and an energy that is very contagious and is really amazing. And when we come from that place, our activism really can skyrocket. And it's the first time that I get a clap from that, and I think it's got to do with, you know, with anarchism and with the way we think and see the world. Anyway, yeah, this one. Yeah, so yeah, some pictures of militias. Yeah, this was actually the picture I wanted to sing the lament to. It was very beautiful. Yeah. This is Federico García Lorca. He was an amazing man. He lived in the south of Spain. He was an incredible poet, dramaturg, musician, songwriter. He was a socialist, a very committed activist. He was a homosexual, a wonderful guy, and he got killed by Franco troops in the very early days of the war. And in the 1920s, he had written a very beautiful song that kind of like changed its lyrics to reflect the passing of time. And when he wrote it first, it was a very beautiful love song about. It's called the Cuatro Muleros, the four men that go with a mule to in the country, and it says, from the four muleros, men with a mule, the one with the brown one is still in my soul. And another verse is, why are you going up the road to get the fire when all the light when it comes out from your face? And these lyrics changed when during the time of the Civil War and became the symbol of the resistance of Madrid. And I'll sing the original ones, and then I'm sure probably some of you know some of the ones from the Civil War. It was translated to English as well and given lots of lyrics. Anyway, here it goes. De los cuatro muleros, de los cuatro muleros, mamita mía, que van al agua,
agua, el de la mula torda, el de la mula torda, el de la mula torda, mamita mía, me roba el alma. During the time of the Civil War, some people from the International Brigades, British International Brigades, wrote these lyrics. Madrid, your deepest sorrows, Madrid, your deepest sorrows, Madrid, your deepest sorrows, we will remember, we will remember. There's lots more other English lyrics that I don't know. Some of the Spanish lyrics of the time when it was specifically for the Battle of Madrid. Puente de los franceses, puente de los franceses, puente de los franceses, mamita mía, nadie te pasa, porque las milicianas, porque las milicianas, porque las milicianas, mamita mía, que bien te guardan, que bien te guardan. So this song changed lyrics as well, and my mom used to sing it with different lyrics. It was a love song, but it wasn't Lorca's lyrics, it was different ones. And then it changed lyrics again in 2011. And it was 2011 was the 75th anniversary of the Spanish Revolution, but also was the birth of the M15 movement. And there was a band that became the Solfónica. The Puerta del Sol in Madrid got occupied, and there was a band that was named themselves the Solfónica. They would come to the square and play and, you know, organize rehearsals through social media and give papers with lyrics to everybody. You would bring your instrument and just play along. And they changed the lyrics of this song, saying that, talking about the banks and the corruption of the banks, and the banks were the new dictators, and they were the new powers that were oppressing the people. And yeah, I just would like to talk a little bit about the M15 movement, and it just sparked out of, at the end of the anti-cuts demonstration, people have very present in their memories Tahrir Square and the Arab Spring, and after a very brutal charge by the police at the end of one of the anti-cuts demos, some people decided to stay in the square and camp there and spend the night, kind of like in the spirit of Tahrir Square. And they were evicted by the police in the morning, started tweeting around and, you know, publishing messages in Facebook, and hundreds of people came and stayed, and it became like the occupation of the square for many, many months. This spread to the rest of the country as well, and it then happened in New York with the start of the Occupy movement and stuff, which spread as well to Europe and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know, you probably know the terrible situation that Spain finds itself in at the moment. And when I come to this point, I speak quite a lot about grassroots organizing, and probably that's not very relevant tonight. You're probably involved in groups and know a lot about that. But basically, it's very exciting to see how people how people started a conversation that hasn't happened for a very long time. In the squares, people started to meet. They create commissions for I don't know, people of color, feminist commissions for cleaning, for mediating with the press, for, you know, immigration, healthcare, etc. And it was some Republican flags that hadn't been out since the times of the war just came out to the streets, and people, intergenerational people started to talk, and people who have been youth, who have been until then in their homes just looking at television and waiting for a job who never came, just started to realize that they could engage in community organizing and do something about it. And I think it was an incredible eye-opener for all this youth that is more than 50% is unemployed in Spain. And also it was a time of, for many people, an eye-opener about how social movements are repressed, because they kind of witnessed firsthand the repression of the police when the evictions came. And yeah,
And yeah, what else to say? That can be, well, the squares were occupied for many months in many places of Spain. There was marches organized as well to go to the center, where there was a lot of conversation. It was that people went from all different parts of the country just walking towards Madrid, and just in every village there was, when they were passing, there would be meetings. What are our social problems? How are we going to solve them? And how are we going to do about it? What can we do to create this society that we want to create, and at the same time challenge the laws of the government and try to change it at that level as well? So, yeah, it's fascinating as well to see how people trying to use consensus decision making and explain it, and for large numbers of people, for thousands of, hundreds and sometimes thousands of people in the square just trying to make a decision that way. So it's quite very interesting. And after the evictions, people moved to neighborhoods. And there's a system of neighborhoods is still happening in all over Spain. The commissions keep going, and people meet every Saturday all over Spain, and they communicate through the internet, obviously, and they are engaged in an unprecedented way. I've never witnessed anything like that. It's pretty amazing. And the numbers dwindle and swell and stuff, but the structures that were created at the M15, they're still happening. Incredible support last year to the miners' strike as well that took place in Spain. So yeah, it's quite remarkable and still going. There's a lot of action as well, direct action being taken against evictions, which are as an epidemic, a terrible epidemic. And there's also, last year was like 100 suicides of people who were about to get evicted in Spain. So it's really terrible. And there are many groups engaging in direct action that way and trying to stop evictions, and succeeding in many ways, is mediating with landlords and mediating with the banks and do what they can. And trying to change the law. The mortgage law in Spain is really draconian, really horrible. You pass the debt to your children, to your inheritors, and also people are getting evicted for like being late in the payment, like of a couple of £100 or something. You may lose your house for that. So it's really horrible as well. And so crisis is capitalism. That. A queer commission, one of the commissions. And this is the Solfónica, the one that I was telling you before, which is really nice. And the last one is, this is the Solfónica. When they finish a set, they put their instruments in the air and they say, these are our weapons, estas son nuestras armas. And that's the way people are fighting, which is incredible, creativity and solidarity, which is really beautiful to watch. It's painful times, but it's beautiful times as well. It's wonderful resistance. So I would like to finish by thanking Hydra Bookshop today. And by saying that I got some CDs with some of the songs as well. They're a fiber. So if you want one, that's great. Another thing is just, I have a little book. If you want to write anything or write your details, you want to keep in touch, that would be great. Write any feedback about the performance or whatever. And I'm going to finish with a song by Mujeres Libres, which is this anarcho-feminist group from the Civil War. And this is the hymn that they wrote. And the hymn says, "Raise your fist, women of the world, toward horizons full of light. We have a foot in the ground and an eye in the sky. We are defying tradition, we don't care about the past. What we want is to write again the word woman."
Puño en alto, mujeres del mundo, hacia horizontes preñados de luz, por rutas ardientes, los pies en la tierra, la frente en lo azul, afirmando promesas de vida, desafiamos la tradición, modelemos la arcilla caliente de un mundo que nace del dolor. El pasado se hunda en la nada, nos importa el ayer. Queremos escribir de nuevo la palabra mujer. Puño en alto, mujeres del mundo, hacia horizontes preñados de luz, por rutas ardientes, adelante, adelante de cara a la luz. Puño en alto, mujeres del mundo, de horizontes preñados de luz, por rutas ardientes, los pies en la tierra, la frente en lo azul, afirmando promesas de vida, desafiamos la tradición, modelemos la arcilla caliente de un mundo que nace del dolor, que el pasado se hunda en la nada, que nos importa el ayer. Queremos escribir de nuevo la palabra mujer. Puño en alto, mujeres del mundo, de horizontes preñados de luz, por rutas ardientes, adelante, adelante de cara a la luz, adelante.